Hello. First note of business is the pizza's on the way. We need food to say, have some sustenance. And I have been fighting the crud for 3 weeks, so please apologize if I cough. Welcome, I am Mike McKenna, the Executive Director of the Chamber of Haley and the Wood River Valley. It is my honor to join the Advocates, the Alliance, and the Hunger Coalition to facilitate tonight's forum. These organizations, okay, all right. There's a happy spot here somewhere. Should I just talk without it? No, okay. That was pretty obvious. I'm getting some clear directions here. Hello, okay. We have an issue. That one has no power. How about this one? Ooh, that's better, thanks. Today we will hear from two candidates running for the Blaine County Sheriff. We have incumbent Sheriff Steve Harkins, and we have Officer Morgan Ballis. They will be opposing each other in the May Democratic primary. Please be sure to vote. Early voting has started today, and the vote day is May 21st. The winner will be opposed by Aaron Houston, the Republican nominee, in the November general election. Officer Houston was invited to participate tonight, but respectfully declined to give the Democratic candidates the floor ahead of the primary election. So for today's forum, we will start by allowing each candidate to have a 5-minute opening comments. And Steve, please lead the way here.
No pressure here. Thanks everyone for coming out. My name is Steve Harkins. I've been your sheriff for the last 7.5 years. I've lived in this community for over 3 decades, moved here in 1992. Started my law enforcement career about 33 years ago. I started as a dispatcher in Twin Falls. 1992, I was hired by the Haley Police Department, where I served as a patrolman. 1998, went to the sheriff's office, where I became a major crimes detective, where I spent about 12 years of my career doing a lot of drug enforcement, child abuse investigations, major theft investigations, pretty much anything felony related. 2009, I was promoted to the Ketchum Police Department, where we took over transition for services up there, which is a contract that still remains successful. Saved the city taxpayers up there a lot of money, while still really providing excellent law enforcement services. In 2014, I became the chief deputy under Sheriff Gene Ramsey, where I spent a couple years and ran for sheriff in 2016 when I was elected. So I have a vast knowledge of investigational experience. That was probably one of the most favorite parts of my career. Probably been involved in hundreds and hundreds of felony investigations and successful prosecutions. Even recently, on the major crimes, the terrible crimes we had in Bellevue of the homicide and the officer-involved shooting, and then within a week or so later, the horrific shooting that happened at Lions Park, I was there with my guys and gals working the case and leading the charge. Even though we have competent detectives, sometimes the old guy knows a few things, and I'm out there working with them. So I think it's important that you have a sheriff that has a lot of that knowledge of these major crimes and keeping our community safe. You know, a little about BCSO. BCSO is 70 employees. It's not just patrol operated. We also run a medium-sized detention center, which is the highest liability in the county. We have a civil division, a search and rescue, detective division, court security. It's a pretty big operation to run. There's a lot of responsibility behind it. We have a $10 million budget. Running a budget that large is not that easy. So it's taken me 15 years of administration, 7 years before I was sheriff, to be able to learn how to do that with my team and be successful at it year in and year out, being fiscally responsible to the taxpayers' money and still yet providing great services. So it takes a lot of experience to be able to get to that level and have a great team behind you. I can tell you that we've had zero liability payouts since I've been your sheriff. I don't recall of ever paying $1 out to a lawsuit. There is very few police departments and sheriff's offices that can say that. That is because of good management and good leadership from me and my command staff. And that's also a cost of savings to the taxpayers. We recently had our ICRIMP, our state insurance fund. We were assessed at the highest level of patrol operations, leadership, and training. Very few agencies can say that as well. Another thing I want to talk about is mental health to police. It's important. Back when I was a detective and a patrolman, let's face it, police officers and first responders see things that really no one should ever see. They see people at their worst, and they're dealing in crisis. And I never had that help when I was younger. It was kind of actually frowned upon. And now we know it's needed to keep our police officers and first responders healthy. And we need to normalize it. And for them, seeking help is like treating it like a physical injury. And we know that. It's very important to do that. We were the flagship agency to get that running up here. And it's now becoming a local chapter. And it is now offered to all first responders and their families. So very important. The Hispanic liaison team, we knew there was a gap within that part of the community and law enforcement 3 years ago. I went to my management team, and pitched this idea of starting a Hispanic liaison team to gauge that community, build trust and partnership with them, to let them know if they are a victim of a crime, come and report it. We want to help. We're not going to arrest you because of your status. We won't ask you if you're illegal or not, and we're there to help you. And it's very important that, people aren't scared of us. Other priorities, drug enforcement, I got to wrap it up here, police and schools, mental health, training standards, community programs, cooperation, and above all, public safety. About me, I'm not a political sheriff. I've never been a political guy. I try to be a sheriff for everyone. I think public safety transcends politics, and I don't let politics make my decisions. I try to be a good sheriff and do the right thing. I can tell you my staff of nearly 70 people support me. They support me as sheriff and my reelection, and you don't get that support easy. That's hard to get. That's one of my biggest achievements of having the staff support me and respect me. And you don't get that by being absent. And there's many of them out here. Talk to them about me. I know what they're going to say. They'll say great things about the sheriff's office. And I can tell you, you have one of the most amazing sheriff's offices in the state. And there are a lot of good ones out there. And I'm very proud of everything that we do. And we are a professional organization, well-trained, and one of the best. And thank a police officer when you see them out protecting your community or protecting a loved one that's in our facility. I mean, they do a great job, and I owe a lot of that to them. So with that, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Sheriff Harkins, and now Officer Davis.
Officer Ballis, but I won't beat you up on it. Sorry, I was in the Marines. I've gotten a lot worse than Ballis, trust me. Well, thank you so much to the Hunger Coalition and our other hosts tonight for having this forum for our community. We really appreciate it. My name is Morgan Ballis, and I'm running for Blaine County Sheriff. The sheriff really serves two functions. The first function is as a leader and an administrator at the sheriff's office. And to be truly effective in that role, it takes someone with a diverse leadership and administrative experience, not just limited to one county. I spent 11 years in the United States Marine Corps and was able to gain global leadership and administrative skills. I worked on all the way down to the squad level as an infantry squad leader, running combat deployments in Iraq, all the way up to the battalion level, which is more than 500 Marines and some Navy corpsmen, supporting them and their families as a family readiness officer as they transitioned out of the Marine Corps. I know what leadership and administration looks like. I ran two very successful businesses. One of my businesses is currently being ran by 100% disabled veterans. I know what it takes to build a team, to build a vision, and to watch that vision play out for the betterment of a community. For the past 2 years, I've been extremely blessed to be part of Haley Police Department, specifically as the school resource officer at the high school. But I actually operate as more than just an SRO. I operate as an emergency manager for Blaine County School District. the second largest employer in Blaine County. 500 staff members, over 3,000 students. And I was able to work with that team, to work with community partners to bring change to our school systems, a change that's been recognized on the national level as a model of what evidence-based and trauma-informed school safety practices look like. So the sheriff serves as an administrator at the sheriff's office. But being an elected official, they also serve the community. And I believe that is the component that is currently missing, is serving the people that elected you. You know, my opponent said that he's not a politician. I think what he meant to say is he's never had to be a politician. He's never been opposed in a primary. He's never been opposed by a real Democrat. And so this is new territory for him to actually have to earn your vote, to earn your confidence and not take it for granted. Serving the community means collaboration. It means building a team, building a vision together, and building a coalition for change. In order to get ahead of the curve on public safety, we need to focus on prevention and mitigation. It's not just about preparing our officers for their day-to-day interactions. That's obviously important, but it's about working with community members to bring about the change that we need. When we look at the areas of mental health and suicide prevention, working with groups like the 5B Suicide Prevention Alliance and connecting with them to figure out how, as sheriff, we can support that initiative and work on those underlying issues. When it comes to sexual assault awareness, working with groups like the advocates to get ahead of the curve, educate our community on what sexual assault actually looks like and how we can be preventive, not just responsive in that nature. What I want to do as sheriff is I want to work with you as the community. I believe that the public should have input in public safety. That starts by having a sheriff that has an open door, that you can actually reach when you want to reach. When you have an innovative idea that you want to bring to the table in order to foster that change, that we're working together and that we are collaborating together. What I want is to build a community where the sheriff isn't siloed at the sheriff's department, but is accessible so that we can work on true prevention and we can address public safety on an entire front, not just from the officer's perspective, but from your perspectives. My name is Morgan Ballis, and I would ask that you join our coalition. I want you to be part of our team. In order to foster that change and to bring in a sheriff with a diverse administrative background and leadership background, I need your support. And I'm hoping tonight to earn that support on May 21st. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dallas. So I've been handed 4 questions from the sponsors of this event, and then we've taken 6 already from the crowd that we will then go through. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes roughly to answer each one. And to make it fair, I think what we'll do is Sheriff Harkins will take the first one first, and then we'll kind of go back and forth so you don't have to go first every time. The first question we have is, what role do you feel the Sheriff's Office should be playing in the emerging mental health efforts in our community?
As I said earlier, I think mental health is important, not only to the officers, but to the community. I have a detective, Carrie Taylor, is leading the charge on developing the crisis intervention team, which is a team of individuals, of law enforcement, healthcare providers, families that are training officers and deputies to how to respond to someone in crisis. It's important that when we're responding to someone in crisis that we know that have mental health concerns or they're having an episode, that we respond to them appropriately to de-escalate the situation. And it's important that we're giving these deputies and these officers this training. I've been involved in the steering committee on that, of trying to get this developed. And I have getting a training set up sometime later this year, and then another training to get all officers involved with that. I understand it's a major problem. We have people that we deal with sometimes on a daily basis that are having mental health crises, and there's not a lot of resources in this community for them, sadly. And I wish I knew a way of how we could get more help to them, to where they're just not being seen once a month by their physician, and that there would be more support from them. But we are leading the charge as a law enforcement agency of learning how to help these people when they are in crisis and responding. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think the Sheriff's Office is doing some amazing things when it comes to preparing their officers to respond to mental health crises. I've seen them on the ground, and they're doing great work in that area. We can keep training officers to respond to suicide calls, or we can address the underlying issue of suicidality and mental health. And I think that's where we really need to focus. Having an emergency management background, there's 5 phases of emergency management. The first is prevention. The second is mitigation. I want to focus on the prevention and mitigation. I was lucky enough about a month ago to view a movie up at Sun Valley. For those of you that were there, it specifically addressed the mental health crisis in mountain towns. It was a story of a family here in our community that experienced a tragedy in their family involving suicide. What struck me most about that video was that there was a chief of police that was deeply involved in helping bring about a systems change in that community. It wasn't just about helping his officers get better at responding, which the Sheriff's Office is doing great at right now. It was about working and collaborating with that community, of showing up as a law enforcement leader and say that we know that we can always do better as officers, but we need to address the underlying issues. And I've already been deeply committed and interconnected in this community in that area, working with our kids at schools, working with our families on the back end of a tragedy, helping our counselors and our school psychologists. I understand what it means to be boots on the ground and the impact we have when law enforcement steps into that very uncomfortable role. And as sheriff, I want to continue to do that collaboration. I want to build those systems so we can address the real issue and not just respond to the issue.
Thank you. Officer Ballis, we'll have you handle the next question first. All 3 organizations that are hosting this event have worked with victims of sex trafficking and labor trafficking. What is your approach to address these grave issues?
Could you stand up, because we can't always see on the other side of the podium?
Is it any surprise that Sarah's trying to direct us? Is that surprising anyone else? Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to be clear with you. Sex trafficking has happened, is happening, and will happen in our community. Our definition as the general public of what sex trafficking is that there's a child that is kidnapped and taken to another city and held there and sexually extorted, right? Or maybe there's a business and then in the back there's something else going on and there's people there against their will. Okay? The Idaho Code for Sex Trafficking is extremely clear, and for anyone that wants to read the code, we'll hand it out to you after this, especially when it comes to minors. If there's an exchange of anything of value for sex, if drugs are exchanged for sex, it is sex trafficking. If money is exchanged for sex, it is sex trafficking. If there's a couple renting a room and they can't afford their rent and the boyfriend convinces the girlfriend to have sex with the person that owns that room, that is considered sex trafficking. It's very clear. So the first way that we address it is that we're honest about the conversation. We've come this far with mental health and suicide awareness to realize we have to call it what it is in order to address it. Now, I am not saying that our community experiences this at higher rates than anyone else. I am not saying that any agency or officer has failed to investigate any of those things that are going on, right? But just because it's not reported as sex trafficking does not mean it doesn't happen. Now, I actually want to apologize to the community for the sheriff's post the other day on Facebook, where I felt like he intentionally deceived the public when he said we have had no reports of sex trafficking here. That hurts our community. When people are commenting, thank you, I feel safe now, that doesn't help us move that conversation forward. And it doesn't help us address the underlying issue. We need to be honest about what it is so that way we can work as a group against it. Thank you. There's the question again.
The question again.
I just want to read it.
Did everyone hear the question the first time?
Okay. So my opponent and I have a different view on this, and I'm not downplaying sex trafficking. I know that sex trafficking happens all over the world every day, and it can happen in our community. It may have happened in our community, and possibly it will. So it's sex trafficking is the commercialized business of recruitment, harboring, transportation, provisions, and obtaining, patronizing a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act. And when my opponent goes around and says that there's child sex trafficking occurring, my phone was ringing off the hook. People are scared. They're like, this is going on, and the sheriff is not doing anything about this. And I gave them the same statement of like, I'm not saying it hasn't happened or it can happen, but we have had no reports of commercial sex trafficking occurring. Now, do we investigate child abuse, rape investigations, crimes against kids, sex crimes? Yeah, we do all the time. I have a team of detectives and deputies that are out there investigating those crimes. Those are not sex trafficking. And if you reached out to the Blaine County prosecutor, he would tell you they are not sex trafficking. There has never been a person that I'm aware of in my 33 years charged with sex trafficking in Blaine County. Sexual abuse of a minor, rape cases, yes, those unfortunately do occur. But when my opponent is going door to door saying there's child sex trafficking going on and the sheriff is doing nothing about it, that's wrong. That's a wrong way to win a campaign, because that is an overstatement, and I think it's a statement of inexperience. And we also had this in the last debate where he also started giving information of an ongoing investigation that is occurring, and I had a detective in the back yell, "That's my investigation," and I had to stop him from divulging those details. So we disagree on that, and I don't think that's a way to fearmonger and try to win an election. And I can tell you, I know of no child sex trafficking rings going on up here. And if I did, I would throw every available resource at it to stop it immediately. Anyone that knows me for the last 33 years knows that's what I would stand for.
There's plenty of room to sit down here if there are people in the hallway.
More room to sit in here, folks. Come on in. We've got some more room. And this is an impressive turnout, and really makes me proud of our community that we would have this kind of attendance. Terrific. Steve, we'll get our next question. What will you do to prevent staff from discriminating against immigrants or people they believe to be non-citizens? How do you think BCSO should interact with ICE or federal immigration authorities?
I'm glad to get this question, actually. We do not discriminate against anyone at the Blaine County Sheriff's Office. And if you've heard that, that is simply untrue. Do not care if you're a man, woman, what religion, black, white, female, male, it does not matter to me or my staff. Everyone is treated with respect and compassion and dignity. That will never change on my watch. So if you're Hispanic, you will never be discriminated against. For God's sakes, I set up a Hispanic liaison team to try to foster and promote those relationships with that part of the community because I knew it was important. I know that there's people out there scared of us because they think we're the immigration police. We're not. I have no immigration authority. Zero. I cannot arrest anyone for being an illegal immigrant, nor do I care. And I won't, because I can't. Our deputies are out there not responding, and they do not ask you, are you a legal citizen or not, or where you're from. That is not happening. We don't care. If you're a victim of a crime, and if you're not a U.S. citizen, call us. We will come and help you. We will not ask your immigration status. We don't care. We're there to help you as a police officer. As for, I've had a lot of conversations with the cooperation of ICE. Do I cooperate with ICE? Yes. I am one of 44, all 44 sheriffs cooperate. I am one of them. And there's a misconception of what that means. And it doesn't mean I have any say of when they place a hold on somebody. They have 3 criteria of that hold when they put an immigration hold. And this is from the Biden administration. Under the ICE, Immigration, Customs and Enforcement, under the Biden administration, it is for public safety, border security, and national security. That is the criteria. And I don't even know what that criteria, how they determine that, but normally it's a violent offender that probably was arrested, served time, re-entered the country, and committed another violent offense. That meets their criteria. It's not the person that gets arrested that is not a U.S. citizen from Canada, Russia, Afghanistan, Mexico, wherever they're from, for DUI, for domestic battery, for theft. Those people walk out our door, they get bonded out like everyone else. These are the dangerous criminals that the Biden administration does not want. And I think it would be irresponsible for me as a sheriff to just release those back into the community. And I know some are, you're not going to agree with me on that, and that's okay. I get that. But I do it for the safety and security of our community. Thank you.
Let me make sure. Perfect. In my experience at the Haley Police Department, I have not experienced one of our officers discriminating against anybody. I've never experienced anyone from the Blaine County Sheriff's Office or Bellevue Marshal's Office or Sun Valley targeting any group of people or a certain person because of their ethnicity, because of their religious status, because of their gender identity. I just have not seen that, and I have not experienced that. And so we will continue to work with what good policy is, continue to train our officers to recognize how to support all of our community. When it comes to the ICE holds, the program that the Sheriff's Office currently has in place is aligned to what it should be aligned to. Those holds are necessary for the safety of the community. Those policies aren't going to change. And the Sheriff has done a good job upholding those policies. Where I do believe that there's area for the growth and a space for the Sheriff specifically to step into is back to collaboration, is back to working with some of our community partners, connecting with the Hunger Coalition and the Alliance of Idaho to figure out how can we better educate, how can we better support, in what areas can the Sheriff step into some of those spaces. And I believe that's something that's missing right now. You know, the Hunger Coalition shouldn't request a meeting with the Sheriff and they're told that they can't meet with the Sheriff. Or told that if you want to meet with one of our representatives, we have to screen your questions first. That doesn't seem accessible to me. Right? We need a Sheriff that is accessible, that's willing to collaborate, willing to have uncomfortable and hard conversations at times. Even if at the end of the day, we still disagree on where we're landing. It's okay. But we need to start those conversations, and I'm going to start those conversations as your Sheriff.
Okay, our fourth and final question from the team. Do you see a value in access to driver's license for all? Why or why not? If so, how would you implement this program and see it through in Blaine County? I believe it's your turn first, Councilman.
I love this question. First of all, the Sheriff doesn't have power to issue that driver's license to someone that isn't a resident of the United States. That would have to be legislation and a law that comes from the state of Idaho. I'll tell you what I do support, though, is a pathway to a driver's license for individuals that are not in our country legally. And here's why. Because what I've experienced on the road is that a lot of those traffic offenses that happen from those newcomer families are from a lack of knowledge, from a lack of being able to go to a driver's education program and simply learn the rules of the road. And so by having either a program that we create in the community or having a driver's license program through the state, it helps to educate them in that manner. It mitigates the contact with law enforcement. It allows us to focus in more critical areas, right? I think overall our biggest concern is less with the driving and more with the insurance. By plugging in and working with the Hunger Coalition, we can help those families understand their responsibility in order to have insurance. Another reason that I support a driver's license pathway is because it helps our job as law enforcement. It's easier for us to identify those individuals. It's easier for us to make contact with those individuals at their home, whether they're getting court service, paper service, whether there's a warrant service. It actually increases our ability and decreases the time that we have to spend trying to find these individuals. And so while I would not have power as sheriff to do that unilaterally, I would support a legislation of that kind. And I would also support collaborating with our local community in the interim to figure out what we can do and what role the sheriff plays in helping to educate that community.
Well, we agree on this. This bill was a couple years ago, went through the House and Senate and didn't pass. It was called Driving Without Fear. So I don't think it's a bad idea. I would be willing to explore it more and learn more about it. It's passed through the legislation. I can't pass this bill. I can't issue driver's licenses. But no doubt we are having people moving here from all over the world with zero driver experience. And they're getting cars and they're driving because they have to work. And it is creating a lot of hazards on the roadway because they simply don't know the rules of the road, especially traveling in the wintertime. They don't have valid IDs on them. So if someone would have a valid government ID, it doesn't make them a resident or a U.S. citizen, but it's a way for us to identify them if they would need help and be able to contact them. They would probably have insurance if they had a valid ID, and then also get some driver's training to be able to how to navigate and drive on the roadways. So I don't think it's a horrible idea, and it's been supported by many across the state. And so I hope this does come up as a bill again. I would like to give my input on it, and if anyone here would like to reach out and talk to me about it and give me your thoughts, I'd be happy. And I do have an open door policy. I talk to people all the time. You can reach me, call me, come at the front door. If I'm there, I'll come out and talk to you. I want to talk to you. So I'm an engaged sheriff, and contrary to what Mr. Ballis is saying, I'm pretty approachable, and you can come and talk to me. I want to hear from my citizens, because that's sometimes where we get the best ideas. Thank you.
Am I up?
Thank you. Now we're going to start our half a dozen questions that were sent in by the audience. As a young person in this community, I feel like my friends and I are unfairly targeted by police. How do you help us trust and respect our police department and feel like it's someone that we can turn to when we need help? Steve, I guess, pick up on this.
You know, that's concerning that a young person would send this in. I can state that we don't target anybody, and we try to do good, honest law enforcement. And some of this may be coming from some of the parties that we have responded to that have gotten out of control. Cops show up, kids run. It's been going on for 30 years. And that's probably never going to change. And I finally have told cops, like, stop chasing them. So that's not helping it either. So, but we went to a lot of recent parties to where homes were being destroyed, and we were taking action on behalf of the homeowners. And really, I mean, that's a small part of this. And I want my officers to have great interactions with kids. We have cops in schools. You know, I'm a big believer of putting cops in schools. We started the lunch program back in 2009, and to develop those relationships. Sometimes when these kids see us, maybe they're having a really bad incident with their family, or it's a very bad night and it's a negative reaction with police. And so I know it's important to foster those relationships. And, you know, I don't want anyone feeling like they're driving around here and feel like the police are targeting them. I won't allow that. That will not happen on my watch. I mean, we're better than that. We're more engaged, and we're more of a professional agency that will not allow that to happen. So, thank you.
So the question, the last part of the question says, how will you help us have trust and respect for police and be someone we can turn to when we need help? I've been extremely lucky to be in the schools these past 2 years and have had the opportunity to watch this play out firsthand. Building relationships and trust starts by being present, by putting an officer in a position to build those relationships and to earn that trust. My opponent said that he's a big believer of having cops in schools, which to me is a little wild of a statement, given the fact that Hemingway School and Cary School, which are in the county's jurisdictions, have been asking for school resource officers for years. I actually helped deputies identify grants that could have helped pay for these positions. And so to me, there's a disconnect for what he says is a priority and what actually is a priority. Especially for a community like Cary School that doesn't have a dedicated officer in their area necessarily all the time, if those deputies are pulled out on another call. Having an SRO in Cary School doesn't just help the school, it helps the community. They're now able to still respond to calls in Cary. Increase that response time, increase that respect, that relationship building. Relationships isn't just about building them with the students or the kids, it's about building them with the parents to gain their trust. And when we gain their trust, they're willing to come to us when they're having challenges, whether it's with themselves or they identify a challenge with another friend. And that should be the end goal. As sheriff, I will do everything in my power to put a school resource officer in Cary School and Hemingway School. I will work as a team to collaborate, to do that through grants, to work with Blaine County School District, to work with those municipalities, because it's the right thing to do. And it's been far too long since those areas have had the same equity as Haley has. It's about creating equity. That's how we get that trust back. And we can do that by putting school resource officers in Haley School and Cary School.
Okay, here's the next question, and Morgan will answer this first. Our community has seen a rise in reported domestic violence calls to 911 and domestic violence homicide within the last 4 years. What are you doing, or what will you do to make sure that offenders are held accountable, survivors are safer, and law enforcement responds with compassion and consistency to domestic violence calls?
Preparing our officers for these calls is extremely important. Not just how do we respond initially and determine what is going on, but how do we keep that continuing support? In the area of victim advocacy, not just plugging them into those resources, but following up with them on those resources. And the officers right now, they are doing a fantastic job, both inside the sheriff's office and those other departments as well. We can continue to help prepare them for that. And we can also continue to help prepare our community to let them know what domestic violence is, how it manifests, and how it can escalate. Trying to work with our community partners to build that education and build that awareness. To help our students and the kids that are exposed to domestic violence get the resources that they need. Because we know those adverse childhood experiences, they carry on to adulthood. They are victims as well. So making sure that we are preparing everybody and anyone that is affected in that area. Not just preparing our officers how to respond to those calls, but again, preparing those families. Getting ahead of the curve, focusing on that prevention and that mitigation. Working with our community partners. And as sheriff, I will continue to do that, to collaborate, to see where we can get ahead of that curve, and also keep pushing to train our officers better in this area.
Thanks, Mike. What question was that? Oh, got it. 6.
Oh, sorry.
So domestic violence calls are some of the most dangerous calls the deputies respond to. The most volatile, dangerous calls that they respond to. A lot of police officers get hurt while being in those situations. They're very volatile. And unfortunately, we have a lot of them up here. A lot of people arrested. Back in the days, the victims had really no support after the arrest and the court process. I think the Hunger Coalition and the advocates they do a great job. We now have started up a sexual abuse response team, which my detective is an active part of that. I believe also Haley Police is too. It gives the victims resources and puts a kind of compassion with it of helping them through this process. We work closely with the prosecutor's office on this. We had a horrible domestic violence case that occurred, and I know my deputies were in constant contact with this victim who was living in fear. And we saw that. And we were there with her every step of the way, helping her through this process. So I think public education, education within some of the community of why does domestic violence happen? It shouldn't. And sometimes we have repeat offenders that come in and it happens far too much. So, but I think we're really getting better at it now of trying to give the victims of this some support through this entire process. And I think we've made a lot of steam doing that.
I should point out that the candidates have not seen these questions, so they're just having handled off the cuff.
We're that good.
What do you think about the deputization of local law enforcement agencies by Blaine County Sheriff's Office, a step that some police officers say would increase the ability of officers from other municipalities to respond more quickly to incidents around jurisdictional boundaries? Without first, you need to request authorization from the Sheriff's Office.
Hot topic that's created a lot of controversy. I have deputized Haley police officers in the past, not opposed to it in the future, but there is a liability in doing that. And at this time, it's a matter between a sheriff and a police chief that I said in the last debate that we will work through. I can tell you my opponent has said publicly that Sun Valley Police Chief Kim Orchard and the Bellevue Marshal Kurt Gaston has constantly requested for me to deputize their officers. That is not true. That is a lie. I just talked to them. I said, how many times have you asked me to deputize your officers? And they're like, never, Sheriff. Never. It's not needed. So I don't know why my candidate's saying that, but they said that they were going to call him and get that straightened out because that did not happen. So in the future, I'm not opposed to it. It doesn't increase response times. Our deputies and city officers work together all the time. If they're requested, automatic. So it's not like having them deputized is going to get an officer to your house 30 seconds later or 3 minutes faster. That's not the case. That's not what it's about. So once they're requested by my officers, it's immediate. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but there is a liability, and I'm not willing to assume that liability at this time. But a police chief and a sheriff, grown men, can work through this. But I'm not going to do it right now.
When talking about deputizing in the past, I've talked about it in conjunction with the narcotics enforcement team. And the want to collaborate and have that interagency collaboration as part of the narcotics enforcement team, bringing them on to narcotics enforcement teams run by the sheriff's office. And so those conversations have happened together. I often have 2 minutes to answer a question or 30 seconds on a door knock. And so there have been times when those conversations have overlapped. When it comes to deputizing officers, it gives those officers the opportunity to respond to a call without requesting assistance. And this comes from my direct experience on the ground, the direct experience of other officers when there is a call that is on the jurisdictional boundary, so just outside of Haley limits. And county has been dispatched to respond to the call the way that they should. But county happens to be out of position. They're in the county. There's nothing wrong with that. That's where they're supposed to be. But when we have an officer a block away from a call and they are asking to respond to that call because they are in position to do so, and the supervisor or whoever's on at that time turns them down, that is not in the public safety's best interest. And so that deputizing allows that officer at that point to self-deploy to that call. It also gives us the ability, if a crime is reported to us, but it happened in another jurisdiction, to potentially continue to further that investigation, especially in cases where we've developed a relationship with that victim and they trust us. It reduces the chance of them being traumatized as they're passed off to another department or another investigator. It reduces the chance that they're going to not be a cooperative victim and just pull out of the case. It reduces the chance that us as officers might compromise an investigation as we're asking more questions. So the deputization has happened in the past, which obviously it is something that can happen. And there's also ways to reduce that alleged liability along with it. And as sheriff, I want to build that interagency collaboration, asking them to become part of the narcotics enforcement team, and also looking at deputizing those departments that want to be deputized.
Here's the next question that was passed in. School shootings have parents, school districts, and law enforcement agencies looking for ways to ensure schools are always safe. What plans do you have when it comes to school safety? What policies would you enact and why?
This is an area that I have a large background in, and I'm obviously very passionate about. For those of you that don't know, my mom actually survived a mass murder incident. She was standing next to Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords when she was shot. She was literally at the table, saved the life of Ron Barber, who went on to be a representative. I actually went to high school with the shooter. It's what got me into this space and into this field as an emergency manager. I'm a nationally recognized subject matter expert when it comes to training law enforcement and school safety, in specifically in active shooter response. I've trained thousands of officers, of school officials in this area. It's why I actually became the SRO at Wood River High School and with the district. My goal was to work with that team in order to create a model of what school safety should look like. And we've done incredible work over the past 2 years, but not just in response. We implemented new systems that focused on prevention, identifying at-risk students that were on the pathway to hurt themselves or hurt others, and figuring out interventions and supports to get them off of that pathway. We looked at our communication systems and our communication assets. I trained all the school staff across the district, to include Cary School and Hemingway School. I leave the city of Haley to go down to Bellevue and train their staff in this area. I've already told you, but as sheriff, I will work to put SROs in those schools. And it can be done. It can be done with grants. It can be done without grants. Just putting a deputy in that school can still happen, especially as the new hires come on, without disrupting any of the patrol that is happening right now. And there's no excuse why it hasn't happened. And so I will continue to work with Blaine County School District, even as sheriff. I will work to put SROs in those schools. And I'm actually working on the legislative level right now. I'm working with Senator Chris Mathias on introducing a comprehensive school safety bill. And that's the activism that I want to do, building those teams as sheriff.
Thanks. So the school shootings, pray to God we never have something like that around here. But, you know, we're not immune to something like that. We've seen it all over the country of these horrific things that have happened. And the good thing is we've learned from them. From Columbine to where the cops just stayed outside, even continuing to Valley. We train with local law enforcement, and we have high-level instructors in this valley that train us for rapid response, all of us. So if there's an active scenario or shooting occurring at any school, we're all going as one team. We all train together. So we know it's a priority, and it's important that that we continue that training and that collaboration of being able to prevent something like that happening. I think a lot of the school district now has increased their school safety, their protocols of locking doors, having a more secure facility. I think that's made a lot of difference. Having more police officers in schools, and I'm going to go into more depth on this. I've tried twice to put an SRO in Cary, twice, and never could sustain funding for it. These COPS grants that he's talking about, they're great. I mean, they certainly help. They pay up to $125,000 on a 4-year commitment. A 4-year commitment for an officer is $460,000. You have to come up with another $335,000 to put that cop in a school for 4 years. So it's not as easy to getting grants. Other federal grants can't supplement the COPS grants. I'm not saying $125,000 is not a great start for it, but the taxpayers have to supplement the rest of it. And when I go to the commissioners, sometimes I'm not always funded. And I barely have enough deputies to stay on top of our call volume now. And if I could put one in our school full time, I would. But I need more cops out in the streets too. I want more cops in the schools. I want more cops in our detention center. This community is growing. I mean, we need more traffic cops. I mean, we need more resources to provide the level of service that you all expect that we provide. So SROs and seeking these COPS grants, I have my grant specialists working on it. We are applying for them too. I want to put a cop in the Cary school, and I've tried twice, one in the Hemingway school. So I support it, and we are looking for funding with my talented management staff of how do we make that happen. I just can't pull one of my deputies who's working patrol shifts and put him in school. I don't even have enough resources to have 2 on at a time. I need more people. So, but we're working hard. I have a smart team behind me of trying to get funded by the county commissioners who set my budget. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna now take 2 audience questions, one from this side of the room and one from this side of the room. So don't all raise your hands at once.
Come on, Wendy.
Do we have a microphone that's going by, or should I just walk right over? Does anyone on this side of the room have a question they'd like to ask the candidates? Hold back your enthusiasm. How about this side?
We got one here.
We have one over here, okay.
Mr. Ballis, you made the comment in your formal remarks that Sheriff Harkins has never had to run against a real Democrat. From what I understand, you just converted from being a Republican to a Democrat a couple of months ago. So who are you really?
I love this question. Let's kill some of the rumors. Let's do it. I don't know. My wife and I both, but we grew up in Tucson, Arizona. Grew up very conservative families. I spent 11 years in the Marines. This might surprise you, but the military leans a little conservative. I don't know if that's surprising to anyone. And so I was a Republican most of my life. In 2020, I left the Republican Party because I couldn't support Trump. I couldn't support the actions on January 6th. I'm someone that's taken an oath to defend the United States Constitution. I take that defense very seriously. And what I saw was an attack on the establishment of democracy. Our family moved here mid-pandemic of 2020. My last duty station was Camp Pendleton, California. And so we moved out here mid-pandemic. In 2022, I registered as a unaffiliated in Idaho. And then right before the election, I switched over to Democrat. In February 23rd, my wife was pregnant. We went in for a 20-week checkup, and she had a very rare infection. transfer to the baby, lethal diagnosis. And our family experienced the horrible laws that the Republicans in this state created. And we had to go to Utah. We had to go through the most traumatic experience of our lives because of those laws. And so, yes, I'm a Democrat. And I'm proud to be a Democrat. I'm proud to stand with an organization that stands for the decisions that my wife gets to personally make with her doctor. I'm proud to stand with a party that is understands that you can't legislate every single medical nuance, given the fact that not a single one of them is an actual doctor. And I fought for democratic values. I created the LGBTQ liaison position at Haley Police Department. I was an expert witness in Roe versus Critchfield that let our students use the bathroom of their choice. I've stood for democratic and actually fought for democratic values before I decided to put a D next to my name. So I hope we squashed any rumors. I wish I didn't have to share our family story in such a public way, and so I apologize to you for that. Thank you.
We've got a question back here.
So my sympathies go out to you and your family for what you went through. And back to going off of what the question just was, when you attended and spoke at the Democratic meeting on April 22nd, a similar question was asked as to why you switched or why you became a Democrat, and your answer was because you have to be a Democrat in Blaine County in order to win. So to me, that begs the question, why should we trust you?
Thank you for the question. Does anyone have a question for Steve? Anybody?
Nope.
I'm not going to argue with you that I didn't say that, or I'm not going to. Whatever I said. Okay. We live in a very purple county, so obviously, being a Democrat doesn't hurt you when it comes to getting elected to office. But I go back to the fact that I have actually stood and fought for democratic principles and have been willing to fight for them. I was the only law enforcement leader in the state to collaborate and work with other educational stakeholders to stop the guns in school bill that wanted to arm teachers just based off an enhanced CCW permit. It took away local control from our school board to make school safety decisions in collaboration with law enforcement. That was before I decided to run for sheriff. I don't know what you want me to tell you, but I know that you can look at my actual track record of what I've stood and what I've fought for and those principles that I fought for. And I think if you take the evidence that you have in front of you of what I've done to fight for those things, it's clear that I stand for those democratic principles, and I'll continue to stand with those principles. As I said, I'm already working with legislators. Senator Chris Mathias is a Democrat senator who asked me to help him on the comprehensive school safety bill. I'm working with Representative Ned Burns and others to identify how we can get some of those Millennium funds back to our community, specifically to create a long-term goal of a youth risk assessment center, to put another step between drug use and mental health and the criminal justice system. So you can go off of words, or you can go off of actions, and my actions have backed those principles.
Okay, now we will have each candidate give a closing argument, or closing statement, I should say. And since you got to go first, Sheriff Harkins will have Officer Ballis go first.
Thank you. Sorry, that was some heavy stuff. For me, the choice is clear on what sheriff Blaine County wants to elect. If you want a sheriff that is only willing to step into uncomfortable spaces, to be present, to be accountable, to collaborate and work with other community partners only during 7 weeks during an election year, then Sheriff Harkins is your sheriff. He's had 7 years to have the opportunities that he's talking about, to bring other agencies onto the narcotics enforcement team for the betterment of our community, to put school resources in our school for the betterment of our schools and our community. In the past 2 years that I've been with Haley, the police department, I have continued to work with our community partners, to build coalitions for change, to look at how we can get to that prevention and that mitigation point and not just focus on the response. I have the background in an administrative and leadership in order to continue to guide the great work that is already happening within the sheriff's office. I understand the importance of not disrupting systems that are working well, but also looking for areas of growth, to challenge ourselves in order to be innovative and to look forward in how we can better our entire community. The sheriff does not just serve the sheriff's office. As your elected official, they serve the community. And that's the missing component that I want to help change. To build those coalitions, that collaboration, that teamwork in all areas. And with your support, on May 21st, we'll be able to do that. Thank you.
So it all comes down to this, huh? It's been an honor to be your sheriff. This has been the most rewarding career in my life. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And being a police officer is extremely tough. We're finding less and less people want to get into law enforcement. I've been doing this for 33 years. And as I said, I think we have one of the most amazing sheriff's offices here. That doesn't come from a sheriff being disengaged and not interacting with his community. I've lived here for 33 years. I know a lot of you out here. I have a lot of great friends, a lot of people I've met. I am out in the community. I'm also out working with my staff, responding to emergency calls, being a real cop. I get out of the office every now and then. I go back in my detention center, visit with them. And I'm pretty approachable. I'm not the jerk that he's making me out to seem. You can call me. I would love to have conversations. Some of the best ideas we've ever had has came from citizens. And we embrace those and we build programs upon them. And that's not going to change. And, as for the net that he's talking about, I want every agency on the net team. Haley's had officers on the net team, and they quit for various reasons. It happens all the time. It's a huge commitment, and not everyone has it. But we'll work towards that. Sun Valley has officers on the net team. Bellevue does not have the resources. They have 4 people. They can't contribute someone to the net team. So collaboration, cooperation, I know is important. And when my opponent is saying that we're telling them that don't respond to calls, we're 5 miles away and you're 100 yards away, that is not happening. That is not happening. And we want help from everyone. And if it's a non-emergency call and if a supervisor says, don't need to respond, we're going to be there. But if it's an emergency call, we are all working together. Because I can tell you, every one of you, when you're in dire emergency and need help, you do not care whether it's a sheriff's deputy, a Haley police officer, Bellevue, it doesn't matter. As long as they have a gun and a badge, that's all you care about. And I understand that. And that's why we all work together. And that's what it's about. I consider them all a family, and we'll continue to work together. And even though elections get a little dirty and nasty, and I have been constantly telling our people, stay off Facebook, stay out of the rumors. work together, support one another as brothers and sisters, and let's get through this. So it's about our community and doing what's right. As for the COPS grants, I want to touch one last thing on this. I do believe putting police in schools. I always have. I started when I wasn't granted school resource officers in Cary. I set up school liaison officers in Hemingway and Cary. One way to have more engagement to them. This year, we are looking for more police officers, potentially some of them going into schools. And I asked in the past and was not funded by them. And don't get me wrong, the Blaine County Commissioners fund me well. I'm a well-funded agency, and I am very grateful, but they have tough decisions to make when 100 people are coming to them asking them for full-time employees and equipment and everything else. And they have to make those tough decisions. But this year, we are going to work hard and try to put more police officers out there. As I said, they're needed. They're needed. Our call volumes are up 10% last year and another 10% this year. This valley has grown, and we understand that, and I'm progressive and innovative of trying to stay on top of that and in front of that with my team. So I would be honored to have your support, and please vote for me on May 21st. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'd like to have a big thank you to the advocates, the Alliance and the Hunger Coalition for hosting this event. We'd like to thank our two terrific candidates. I'd like to remind you that there's pizza here, and don't forget your kids if you drop them off. And I'd finally like to thank you guys, this community. This is very inspiring and impressive, the showing we have here. So kudos to everyone for coming, and thank you very much. And don't forget to vote.
Yeah.